this next year looks like as far as the Paxton Annex. But I think we have an opportunity to have a bigger discussion, and that's really what today's about. And I don't want to steal any of Sherry's thunder, but one of the things we always start with is the why. The why of what we're trying to do, and you'll see this in our PLCs, you see this in our vision, mission, values, but if you take a look at the first two items that we listed up here, we certainly believe that people, not students, not adults, but everyone, learn in different ways and they learn in different time frames. And we hold that true. Also, part of our vision, mission, values, if you understand that, you see how these are related into all of our functions, decisions, and operations should be aligned to these practices. But then you ask this question: how does our current framework address these two essential components of learning? And I would say right there is a disconnect. We talk about individualization. We talk about students learning at different times. We learn about students learning in different ways. But I think, unfortunately, and this is not unique to Platte County High School, and you know this, the way we run our school and the way we set up some of our most precious resources does not lead to this. We got to work really hard in our existing system to make this happen. And that's one of the opportunities that we took a chance to look at as far as what are some next levels of this conversation. Anything you want to add there?
No, other than what I think you're going to see throughout this whole presentation is our mission, vision, values. It's going to be our principles of learning, and it's going to be very student-centered.
And I see some confusion as far as, like, I thought I came in and we were going to talk about Paxum. What does this have to do with that? I promise you we're going to get to that. But I don't want to steal anything from the future, but I think we have an opportunity here. The Paxton Annex is one of the ingredients that allows us to do this. So instead of jumping right into, oh, here's what we're going to do at Paxton, I want to have a bigger narrative, because I think it's going to give some context. We're going to share a video real quick. This is a expert in the field as far as a personalized learning environment. This is research based. There's two co-authors of this big idea, the framework of a mass customized learning. We're calling it a personalized learning environment. But he's going to kind of give you some critical thinking and some thoughts to reflect upon.
And Chad, I would also say that this is not a new concept. That the school that we visited in Omaha has been operating under a flexible schedule framework for 40 years. And so I also want to reassure people that these things that you're going to hear about are very teacher-friendly too, and we're going to get to that. And that's part of the excitement of this. But this is Chuck Schwan, and he is one of the co-authors of the book Inevitable. So if you want a couple of key
If you're taking notes,
Google search words or something, Inevitable would be one of them, and that you're going to see this. There's multiple books. It's going to be mass customized learning. That's the phrase. So that's another buzzword, mass customized learning. You could look that up. Or personalized learning would be another buzzword to learn more about this. But we are going to be providing you resources through our teacher Google Classroom. This presentation we're going to post after we're done presenting to groups after tomorrow, I believe, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this clip is only about 2 or 3 minutes, and it certainly has some good talking points, which I'll ask you at the end of this what really stood out to you about his message. Oh, darn it.
One of the ways to understand mass customized learning is to understand that the industrial age gave us mass production and was very successful during the industrial age. The information age gave us mass customization, which is critical for today's world. So the industrial age is to mass production as the information age is to mass customization. Kind of as simple as that. If teachers look at this, they might be fearful at first about, is this to replace teachers? It certainly is not. What it does, it allows teachers to be more professional. It's hard to be professional when you're working 1 to 25. Doctors are professionals 1 to 1. Architects are professionals 1 to 1. Lawyers are professionals 1 to 1. Don't expect educators to be professionals when it's 1 to 25. It doesn't work. You're in an industry when you're doing 1 to 25. You're mass producing rather than mass customizing. If you start from the student as a center, as you plan mass customized learning, then all of the aspects of the system have to be designed around that. I mean, the school exists for students and for learning. That's what it is. It doesn't exist for the budget office. It does not exist for the curriculum office. It exists for students. It does not exist for the transportation department. And so the transportation department would have to look at how do we do things different so that we can accommodate what these schedules are going to be for the learners that are there. And they would have to take a look at how taxi cabs work, how the shuttle services work. The change process in education is a difficult one. We've talked about that before. And when you think about something like mass customized learning, you really are going to have to be a change agent to be able to pull that off. This is not pie in the sky. When you just first hear the mass customized learning thing, it looks like pie in the sky, but the more you learn about it, the more you know that it's doable.
So what jumps out at you from Dr. Schwann's message?
I'm not professional.
What?
He said, I'm not professional. That was an interesting thought. If you're not one-to-one, since we're in front of 25 kids, it can't be very, just thought that was interesting.
So we have to hire more staff?
Well, and that's part of the logistical component, that's for a later conversation. But think about all of the things in our world, in your world, that you customize. You got iTunes? Yeah, Pandora? What are some other things? One of the, Val and I talked about this the other day, you can even, what is it with the Coca-Cola? You can even,
Oh, well, we were down there this summer at Union Station at, I think it was the Maker Fair, but Coke had this kiosk, and I mean, the line to it was wrapped all around, and people were standing in line so they could put their message on a Coke can. And so it was just interesting.
and even those of you that are extending your college experiences, I certainly have found that taking online courses, I'm able to customize and dictate what projects, what I want to study, and what avenue I want to go with it, as long as it's research-based. So customization is everywhere. This particular slide we will include at the end in the resources. I'm not going to show the first part of it, but just to sum it up, this is a professor at MIT, and his message, he goes back to like the 1800s, and they show guys in riding on horses and shooting rifles and stuff, and the message was back at that time, those skills were essential for livelihood. I mean, that was their transportation, that was for protection, that was for food, not that people don't still hunt, but here's the message. Shooting and writing have now evolved into sports in our world. So what is the curriculum that we are currently teaching? What will that look like for later generations? What's his message?
And one thing I just want to go back and remember, I'm trying to connect the dots. Look at what we're asking our vision and our vision, mission, values, and our principles of learning. Oftentimes don't align to the way that we run and the way we think and the way we do business. So this is kind of reinforcing those concepts. We're going to kind of link this a little bit more to you here in a second.
A 5-year-old today, by the time he's 25, it's going to be 2031. Can any teacher say that they are preparing that child for 2031, for an unknown world? But I believe that I can make a curriculum for that teacher, and that curriculum needs to have only 3 things in it. Reading comprehension is the most critical skill at this point in time for a generation that's going to read off screens for the rest of their lives. Information search and retrieval skills. If people know what are keywords, follow a link or not, it's a key skill. If arithmetic is an outdated skill, this is the skill that will replace it. And finally, if a child knows how to read, if a child knows how to search for information, how do we teach them how to believe? See, in our adult heads, each one of us has a little mechanism. It comes from different places. You and I have different mechanisms of how to believe. Sometimes we say, this is obvious. Sometimes we say, because so and so told me. Sometimes we say, this is rubbish. What's that machine inside? How early in a child's life can we put that in there? If we can do it really, really early, then we would have armed that child against doctrine. And I don't mean only religious doctrine. I mean doctrine in all its forms. I think our job as educators, the biggest job in today's information saturated world, is to give the child an armor against doctrine. Just as in another generation we used to teach the child how to fight with a sword and how to ride a horse.
You want to speak? Okay. If you take a look at some of the key components and some of the things that that we kind of identified and think that is important, we wanted to link kind of what we're asked to do to where good best practices come from. So we believe in success in life, meaningful experiences, and a safe and caring environment. How does that look? Because we have a learner-centered organization. That's in best practices. Take a look at that. I don't have to read those to you. But go ahead and kind of link, and you should kind of see where some of these things come from. Take a look at that.
I might just say one thing about the power standards. In your, especially in the core improvement team and half-day groups, we're having some very honest discussions about power standards and what they are. And I'm really excited about this, and Dr. Sayer can probably talk to this too, and so can Aaron. We were in 2 meetings with science and math today. And I'd rather have a teacher say, Sherry, I don't know what a power standard is. I don't know how to construct my lesson design so I can get the most bang for my buck here, so that I can really be able to chart a student's mastery. I'd rather hear that than pretending to know and not really doing it. And so today was kind of a breakthrough, especially with one department, on just saying, I'm not sure what that is. And that's okay. Now we know where we need to go next. And so those are the discussions. And as we move into more of a personalized learning, we've got to be aware of what those power standards are and how we're going to chart and determine mastery.
So if you take a look at kind of where we said the future, remember, based on best practices, here are how it's linked to what we're getting asked to do in our organization specifically. The last one is the flexible scheduling. That's the video that we sent out to you. Again, that's probably where a lot of our brains are. I saw this video and I want to learn more about that. But in order to understand that, you've got to kind of have an awareness of these parts as well. Because that's where we're going to get to the Paxton piece. And before we kind of dive into this, I want to go back to a conversation that I had with BLT in July. This is the first meeting we had a discussion about this. One of my jobs and one of my roles is visionary leadership. One of your jobs and one of your roles is visionary leadership. Using that as a context, we have, and what I'm calling this is my personal opinion, this is Chad talking here, I have a once in a career opportunity here. Once in a career. And what that means for me is this. We have a district that has really embraced innovation and continuous improvement. And when I say they've embraced it, I mean, they really have given a lot of resources, not just money, but a lot of resources to really support that, which I think is amazing. That's why I wanted to be here. The second thing also, we have a brand new third of our building coming online in 1 year. The other part of that is we also have a one-to-one initiative. All of these things converging at the same time really forced myself and the building leadership team to really address this opportunity. And man, because there was kind of a scale, we could simply walk into that building and take it over. We could assign classrooms, we could take over this classroom, move this over there, do all that. And there's going to be some of that. But shame on us if we don't think bigger, especially with those students. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a parent in this district. We were just talking this morning about our girls. I mean, we're talking 2038, 2040 for some of our kids. 2040. What is this high school going to look like? How do we get them prepared for that? What we thought was important back in the 1900s of shooting and riding horses is not appropriate in the 50s. We could simply take the building over. That's easy. We could move to a block schedule and kind of readjust, reduce some staffing, get some more staff, kind of adjust our instruction. But that doesn't account to some of the other cool things that we have here. A building that's separate from ours, and we also have a one-to-one. So we started doing some homework, looking around. With this unique opportunity, once in a career lifetime opportunity, what are some things that we can do? We have two parts. I'm going to explain this to you. First of all, I'm going to jump down to this part. This is the facility piece. Okay, we got this new building. What is this really going to have? How is this going to impact me? I will tell you, we're going to move into the facilities and we're going to update that facility. That's the easy part. That's the simple part. We're going to move some programming over there and we're going to update it to obviously be a high school setting. Okay, that's that's the easy stuff. We could have stopped there. What does that include a little bit more? One of our goals is moving these outside classrooms into our main instructional environment. I don't think that's radical. I don't think that's anything that we wouldn't commit to as a group. And I will tell the building leadership, absolutely. One of the things is we need to get students out of the trailers. That needs to be a priority. Trailers are going to stay. They're not going away because we're going to need them again in the future. But right now, we have an opportunity to move people into the buildings. So that was one of the priorities. The second thing is program relocation. There are some facilities in that building that are more appropriate than what we have in this building. And the example I throw out here is the theater department. Kim Foster, God bless her, has an English classroom that runs her theater and set design and all that out of it. But then she also has in the set and theater design piece has a lot of workshop construction. Well, where does that happen in this building? Well, right now it's on the stage. I don't know if any of you in that hallway, you're probably hearing power saws and all sorts of crazy stuff going on. That's the facility she has. We have an opportunity to there's a music room in Paxton. It's large, it's got a big, large storage room, it's got a big, giant garage off the side of it. That's a logical choice. Let's move Kim's program from this building, is not designed to meet that needs, to a more appropriate. That's not her final her final spot. Down the road, as we redesign and go to that phase 4 high school, we will probably have to build in a theater arts specific area. But right now, it's a heck of a lot better than what she has. Okay? So there's going to be some program relocation. The other part of that, in his example, is the social studies. We have 3 social studies sections outside, bringing them into the building. Well, that's going to have a conversation on how do we want to, and this is at the department level, the department chairs are having this conversation, is how do we want to bring these people back into the building? Do we want to put them on the north end and shuffle some people? Do we want to move some people into, just literally take them up and put them in Paxton? That's the conversation that's going on, and we're having that at the department chair level. The other part of that is cafeteria usage. Our south end cafeteria is way undercooked for the staff, for the size, for what we need. We know we're going to have to use that cafeteria. I will tell you, I just went there the other day, I'm looking at these little kids, there's about 10 tables and about a bunch of little kids. I'm like, that isn't even gonna have half of our one A lunch would chew this whole room up, just half of those kids. So we're definitely gonna have to think differently and bigger about using that facility. I will tell you, to have a big giant gymnasium off the side of the cafeteria or that commons area, we're probably gonna have to use that for our cafeteria. We're gonna have that conversation. The last part is obviously the upgrade of the restrooms, the infrastructure being bells, internet, I mean, all those things that we kind of think is part of our building, we're gonna have to kind of build that between the two buildings now. Intercom systems, fire alarms, security cameras, the list goes on and on. Classroom updates, that's designed for an elementary school. One example that I give is little cubby holes. All these classrooms have these great little cubbies. Is that really necessary for a high school environment? I'm honestly kind of wavering back and forth, because guess what those make? Great places to put cell phones, great places to put laptops. I mean, they're kind of like, oh, I don't know if we really want to get rid of them. But those are the basic, if we were to just move in, these were things that were going to have to happen anyways, and these are things that are going to happen. So that's kind of the one part of it. Okay, following me here? This is where we have a unique opportunity to set ourselves apart in the state of Missouri, and I believe something that I don't think any other high schools do. This is that visionary leadership side. We're going to try to create an innovative educational experience for not only our students, but also our staff, and honestly, the community. Here's what it really boils down to. Very, very basic parts. We're looking at two frameworks to really push this innovation. One being the flex model, that flex scheduling, that video that we've seen. We're going to show you an example of some kind of down-to-earth stuff, more concrete. But really this idea of one of our most precious resources is time. We all know that. I was in 2 data team meetings, or department meetings today, and they're like, oh, time. Wish we had more of this. I agree. Look at the way we allocate that resource. It's based on something that is decades and decades and decades old. I'm not saying that it hasn't served its purpose. I just don't think it's serving the purpose going forward. That's an opportunity. The other part of this is personalized learning. So you have flex scheduling, you also have personalized learning. And when you overlay these two, really what personalized learning is really meeting the individual needs of the kids. However, and this is where you kind of, I personally, I don't know how you do this without looking at this. And that's just me, maybe that's just my brain, but if you're really talking about personalized learning, because I think our vision, mission, values challenges us to do that already, how can we facilitate that more using time as a resource? And that's where flex scheduling gets to be a really interesting component. We have 2 frameworks that we're using. Again, if you want to go research this, look it up. We're looking at flex scheduling, or flex mod scheduling is another Google search term. The other one would be mass customized learning. Those are the 2 frameworks. Here's what a pilot would look like. Here's what we're proposing. We're proposing using this framework and using this facility to pull 6 to 7 teachers next year to really engage in a pilot of this model. It's going to, and really what we're looking for is kind of the sophomore, junior level, because this is going to involve about 120 to 150 students approximately. When we originally, and I'm going to speak very honest, I'm going to put myself out there, a little courageous moment for me, is I understand there was a lot of concern on being a lack of transparency. I understand that. That is not purposeful, it wasn't by design. We had to do the homework. We had to research this. We had to figure these things out. Because I'll tell you, what we originally were thinking with this is not what is here today. Why? Because we did a lot of homework. I will tell you, we went and visited a high school beginning of September. Really kind of framed some of this for me, because my initial conversation was, let's start with the kids. that is, we're all kid-centered, we're kid-focused, we're gonna start with the students. So we're gonna have 300 to 500 students involved in this and, gonna go from there. Talk to the two people who've done this and implemented this and who are experts in this. The first thing they said, slow the train down, start with your teachers. Start with your teachers, because they're gonna be the vessel that really impacts this pilot the best. So we had to retweak a bunch of stuff. We had to come in with a different proposal, and that's what took some of that time, and I appreciate your graciousness. But we wouldn't have gotten here. My point being is we've done a lot of homework on this. We've done a lot of research on this. This is not something that we're just pulling out. We're pulling it in because we have once in a career opportunity. We are engaging you first. We didn't share this with parents. We haven't shared this with any of the students. The point being is we wanted to start with you because we know it needs to start there. However, we are going to have to include these. You're going to see some focus groups. I got a whole parent group that I'm getting ready to engage in. We're going to talk about this and get their feedback. But this is the model of how we're going to use Paxton. I didn't drive, I don't know how deep you want to go into these things, but again, my takeaways from this is we could have done this really easy, just moved into the building and been done with it. We have an opportunity here to look at it differently. We're starting with a very small group of teachers, a very small pilot. The other thing I want to share with you is one thing that we are a continuous improvement organization, we're going to look at the data and the results. Lots of data, lots of results. Because if it's not working, we might have to spread this out over time. Because I had a question, what does year 2 look like? Based on our indicators, our research, and our results, my anticipation is growing the pilot for the following year, maybe including 15 to 17 teachers, about 300 to 500 kids, growing it a little bit more, making sure we're still understanding it's still something that we can work through. Then after that, the data's going to show us. Because if we're not ready for this, we're not going to proceed into the following years. We're going to make sure it's right.
So is this is happening? Right?
Yes.
Okay, is it board approved?
Board approved? Yes.
When was that done? Do we
The
know?
executive board.
No, I'm talking about the school board. Like, has there been a meeting and that's been? Does that
Because
have
we're
to
not
happen?
here yet. We have not approved parent and students yet.
Does that have to happen for this
No,
to occur?
no. The board doesn't have to approve this.
This is simple scheduling.
Yeah, this is a scheduling and how we operate our classrooms. So under the purview of the executive board of the district, as far as superintendent and assistant superintendent, yes, they have approved this.
I think too, one thing to realize that I will echo and add on to, Chad and I had the opportunity while we were at Westside to sit down with an administrator that's been doing this for 37 years. We were able to gain a lot of info. Sherry's been researching this for the better part of a year or more. I've kind of been following in her footsteps for several months. This is not something that was created last Tuesday. That's why these iterations are sort of different than maybe what you would anticipate. But what I can say for certain that is unique about our opportunity here is that we're meshing both of these, the personal learning and the flex scheduling, together. After 37 years or 40 years in Omaha, we asked them what their next step was, and they said personalized learning. So you can see how we're trying to take these form and function, push them together to make them purposeful. And that's why some of the delay and some of the research has continued, is because we're not looking at one concept.
Do you know how many other schools in the United States do this? Do you have a number?
There's roughly 12. There are probably 4 to 6 in Wisconsin. There are some in South Dakota as well. One in Wisconsin has also been doing it since '64. And others are in year 1 to year 2. And in between that, and of course these couple of schools have been doing it for 40 years. One might ask, if people have been doing it for 40 years, why aren't more people doing it? And it goes back to what Roberta said earlier. It's because it requires 25% more staff. However, in this model, currently it does not. It may require a few additional staff members, but that would be expected as our school continues to grow anyway.
we're gonna need to add staff, we know, just in a natural growth process. So how do you staff for 15 years out? We can start that process now. But I agree with what, the cost is definitely something that a lot of districts really shy away from. I will tell you, you move from a 7-period day to a block, it's almost the same cost. Maybe not 25% increase, probably about 20% increase to your staff. So it's not, I will tell you the other part is teachers are another part of this, but also support staff are another level of this. That in this model, you're gonna need a lot of support staff. This is a very, it's a heavily human resource rich environment, and that's not a bad thing. One of the main components of this process is that one of the main goals that I think is we need to hold true to with flex scheduling is you got to get teachers out of the weeds of making copies. You got to get them out of the weeds of doing some of these more managerial pieces, and you need to hand that over to other people to have them focus on what's the most important thing, learning.
And as an example of that, Chad and I were able to speak to someone who actually controls some of that. They've done the research, how much time does it take to hand out a textbook and collect it? That's a lot of time over the span of a year, particularly in places where it's novel in and out, or multiple sets of things in and out. And so none of that happens in the classroom. And so that's kind of some of the other research that's behind this of time management and that flexible usage of current staff members to handle some of those concepts.
The other thing about, you know, when they said a couple of schools have been doing it for 40 years, why isn't everybody else? Well, technology wasn't where it is now, so that it offers some options to also help do some of the blended learning, some of the beyond the day learning, to make some of that more manageable just within the school itself.
Yeah, and the school we visited is in year 12 of the one-to-one initiative.
I will tell you also, one of the other high schools that we're looking at is Mona High School. They're in their second year of adoption. However, they've already been recognized. Missouri the Missouri Teachers Association featured them 2 months ago, and then also the Missouri Board of Education has acknowledged their innovation. This isn't something that's just, this is very heavily researched. I think one of the things is technology, why didn't it catch on when I was in high school, is because it was very expensive, but also the technology wasn't there to make it work. Now that that's kind of, those barriers are getting to be broken, at least the technology, the budget's always going to be there. We have an opportunity here. Again, starting very, very small. This might not impact you at all next year. It might not impact you in 2 years. So this is not something that we're going to go full force, building wide, right out of the gate. That's not an appropriate move.
Have we researched like how this works with like NCC and Northlink caps and like how does this?
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
kind of go into
Seems like it
kind of
worked
how that looks. Sherry, you want to?
Yeah, I sure will. With and so we wondered PC style, do our own take on this, and so I created. This is a teacher schedule. Now this is not set in stone, and probably the coolest thing about this is teachers get to decide their own schedule within their department. So I would go to Angie Perkins and I would say, okay, we're going to focus on pre-AP English. How many times a week do you need to lecture or give a large group experience to your kids? She may just say once. I'd say, how many small group settings, you know, if you have 60 kids assigned to you, what do you want that to look like? Well, I'd like to have groups of 20 meet with me 3 times a week. All right, done. How much time do you want purpose to have small conferences? Small, one-on-one, or meet with 2 or 3 students? Well, I'd like much more time with that than I would with anything else. And so the teacher, this is what's lovely, the teacher gets the say-so in the schedule. So in this one, this is just, for our purposes, the 7-period day in this building will not change next year. So those folks that are currently, I mean, we're just gonna do our 7-period day. You'll have seminar on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Nothing will change. The people in this program will leave after first hour. Y'all know why we didn't touch first hour, because, you know, about a quarter of our school's in band. And we don't want to eliminate those students from this experience. So, second hour, those kids go over into Paxton, and for a 3-hour period of time, if you think of it, they have a chunk of 3 hours. They'll be assigned 3 classes. So on SIS, it'll appear Valerie has English 3, second hour, third hour, government, fourth hour, algebra 2. Okay? How that looks is up to the teachers. So that algebra 2 teacher may need, you know, I'm going to offer 2 large group settings. I've got this coded here. And this is what this teacher's Monday might look at. What's this green? It's not necessarily open time, but it's time that you're available to conference with kids. They can come up and just without an appointment, conference with you, or you can schedule them to come see you. You've identified them as somebody who has a learning gap and they need some one-on-one time with you.
Like a writing lab?
That's like the resource on the video, exactly.
Is it like a writing lab type of thing, or a math lab, science lab, where they come in, they sit there, and then you help them one-on-one if they need that?
I think that's up for discussion. I mean, one of the visions that we've talked about, and you know, writing labs, science labs. What if there was just a science lab available that when kids needed to make up a lab in DNA or whatever it is, I mean, they schedule that with that lab teacher and they come in on this time in their schedule to do that.
And so if you think about it, as Sherry's pointing out, that learning studio time, the green time, I mean, remove teacher and put student. There's also going to be green time in their schedule so that they can access some of the resources, either for remediation or enrichment. Now that may not just be focused on the core, right? That might be a child that needs some time to decompress and go play their cello. That might be a child that goes to a maker space and creates something. I mean, there's a wide variety of ways that time can be used, but the beautiful thing is it gives you as the educator access to those children that you know that you need to connect with that can't stay after school.
Purpose time in the day. And, okay, so finishing this out. So for fifth hour, these students, their day, their experience will be concluded. And so will the teacher. They will literally have a 5th, 6th, and 7th hour back in this building. And so the teachers have what we know as traditional 5th, 6th, or 7th hour. Our thought at this point is first hour would be a common plan for every teacher in this program. That is why we have that time to collaborate. We can make adjustments to kids' schedules. This doesn't necessarily have to be a semester schedule. As far as we're concerned, this could be a weekly schedule. And then I get together with my team of 6 or 7 teachers and we determine that, government's gonna change this week. Because I don't need large group. I don't need to lecture to my kids, but I need that small group time.
And so what would that look like? That might look like a child or the students, all of them, walking in, seeing a master board that just indicates, today I'm meeting in large group in large group room number 1 for government or whatever. So we've had a few questions about, will the students be totally confused? Not necessarily, because they're going to have something in front of them all the time that sort of shows them, and not to mention that they'll have a device with them, a phone, that all of this can be updated. And while I'm on that track, the confusion really wasn't an issue at the last school, not just for the students that have lived in that environment, but for transfer students. We asked, what do you do? Because they live this all day. What do you do with a child that walks in, halfway through and they say, what do you mean? They just read their schedule. That cleared it up. I mean, it's not like you need a huge onboarding process to get a child from one place to the next, which we kind of assumed maybe you would.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
How often do their schedules change, or have they changed in the schools that you've looked at?
Their success rate will tell us.
Well, I mean, do they schedule their students for the whole semester, or do they schedule their students weekly?
I think they're assigned to the class.
Yeah, they're assigned to the class, and could be even more than the 7 hours. Some of these students have 8, 9 classes that they're working on at one time.
And imagine that green time for one of these students could be an online course.
If I'm an A student, I've got everything licking, I'm going through class, I'm gonna use my open blocks, I can pick up a college dual credit course, I can pick up an online course. I mean, the idea is flexibility in the schedule. Right now, we're so rigid in the 7-period day that this really breaks some of those molds of things that have been inhibiting us. And I will tell you the couple things that I'm zeroing in on is, first of all, I see a lot of safety nets. Kids who are struggling, kids who really have a hard time with this course, maybe not with this one. I mean, this allows us to build in a lot of safety nets. Instead of seminar being everything to everyone, we can build a purposeful schedule to say, listen, I know you're struggling in this. I teach it this block, but you know what? Mr. Johnson also has a large group on Friday. Let's double dip you there. Let's assign you to that class too, so that you're getting 2 different perspectives. Because when you come to the lab, I know you're going to have double the instruction. Whereas right now, we have algebra and algebra lab. That's a very expensive model in a 7-period day. In a flex model, we'll just build it into their lives.
And I saw a few eyebrows go up when Sherry mentioned 60 students. Let's peel that back for a moment. So take a look at one of those chunks of blue right there. So that one in particular, it looks a little bit more extended. Well, what if you had 80 students? What if you had 75? But what if you had, what if you had 80 in one large group? But you're just lecturing, or you team up with your partner and we both teach the same thing and we say, we're going to spend our whole group time together.
I'm taking my kids, I'm taking your kids, we're going to do a large group session, we're going to team teach.
So now you have multiple teachers. Now, one thing that we saw in a chemistry lab in this large group setting was a teacher doing some demonstrations. Now they were seamlessly rotating, right? They're pros at this. But then one of them was also simultaneously answering student questions via a blog. So I could pull out my device and send in a question and get immediate feedback without ever interrupting the other 70 students.
Wow.
That was,
The other part of this safety nets is a big part. Remember, because when I get asked and I've gone to a lot of conferences, the big thing is now safety nets. You hear that word a lot in the literature. What safety nets do we have here at Platte County High School? I struggle with that. I think we do have them. I'm not saying we don't. It's just in this model, oh my gosh, I see a lot of them. And they're very natural. And they don't require big, giant adjustments and huge, huge mountains to move. The other part of this that I want to go back to, I talk about using data and making sure that this is the right move, it's the right model, it's the right framework we're going to. In my science brain, as a former science teacher, I am seeing a control group and I'm seeing an experimental group. I have kids living this, and they're going here. I have teachers living this, going here. Imagine the control group. They're going in and out of both. They're going to be able to speak to what's working, what's not. What are the advantages of the existing? What are the advantages of this new flex mod? That's the kind of data that this pilot, the way we set it up, because it's so small and it kind of jumps in and out of both worlds, that we can really get some good information, very detailed information. So and I share that with you because that's how careful the BLT has been in really trying to design this. Yes?
The teachers, are you going to have teachers who want to move towards this interview for this, or are you going to handpick teachers? And also, if you don't handpick, if they are teachers who aren't already going to make these observations and you choose those teachers, would the teachers that you pick be able to go observe a place that already has this?
Okay. Awesome questions. You're awesome questions. Here's a couple things. First of all, because of the importance of this, because this is certainly a stretch, certainly this is new, we want to make sure the right people are in the front lines of this. And what I mean by that is, we could have picked, we could have done all sorts of things. I will tell you the strategy is going to be this. We're going to deploy a survey. The survey, I think one of the questions is going to be simply straight up. Are you interested or not?
And that's why it's really crucial that that survey is not done out of compliance. because it's gonna tell us where teachers are as we look at phases for the next several years. And you might have a teacher that it has all of the skills necessary, but just says, man, I'm not ready to go.
And that's, again, so the first, one of the questions is gonna be, are you gonna be interested in this, yes or no? Then the subsequent questions are gonna be asking you some questions on a customized learning environment. How much of your curriculum has been digitized? How comfortable are you in these kinds of environments? And basically, that's gonna allow us to gauge existing staff that wanna be a part of it, because the other part of this is, I might not have the skill set right now, but I am super interested in being a part of this. Well, now what we can do is identify, hey, you wanna be a part of this? We can build you a PD plan to make sure that you're ready by the time it comes. And that's why that survey is gonna be a real big piece of data. I will tell you, just so you know, right now we're looking at starting with core. Core classes being math, English, and social studies right now. Science is not on the table at this point because the whole lab concept with the chemistry and having a lab not in that, you don't want to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of creating a lab in a building that's half of it's going to be demolished down the road. So we're kind of navigating what science might look like. Right now that's not on the table, but really the three remaining cores are. Again, it's a sophomore, junior level kind of bullseye that we're looking for.
And I would say, to address your other question about, will teachers be able to go and observe? Absolutely. The other thing that went into creating this is, and this is a shift in the mindset, but in this world, they are not my students. They are our students. And so part of what that looks like for next year is maybe you or you have a counterpart that's a CWC teacher or a special ed teacher in that environment, and you go to her and say, I'd really like to live your schedule this week. Okay. You have a counterpart over there, or you're over there, and you say, I'm willing to come into your classroom, teach in the traditional setting, so that you can experience what it's like to stand in front of 80 students and directly instruct. And that's the beautiful thing about what Dr. Sayer said and the way that Sherry has crafted this, is that all of that remains flexible. And so I get to go for 1 week. It's not like you're being hauled over there and said, good luck for the year. But now you get to think about that and experience that. Is that an expectation? No. But that's some of this flexibility of, okay, can we move in and out of this environment as a learning opportunity as opposed to some sort of contractual agreement?
It might just start with a day.
Absolutely, yeah.
It might just be
an
a day
hour.
instead of a week. It might just be, hey, I want to go, can I come in from 8:30 to 9:30? I just want to see what that's like for a day. All right, do a little swap-a-rooney and give us some feedback.
I know you can't probably tell this right now, but if teachers are interested in doing that, they'll have maybe first hour plan time together to kind of work through stuff, but will there be extra meetings required of them to be at before school, after school, to try to work through that?
Well, one of our proposals, and certainly, this would require, some superintendent support here. The A plan would be, that fifth hour would be a team time for that group. So they would start their day together and they would end their flex day together. And it's gonna be, the drive of the day is we are collecting data on these people. I envision a scorecard on every 120 kids. We know exactly where they left off in your improvement team process this year. That's gonna be critical data for us moving into, how are they in your SLO?
So then it really ends up being second, third, and fourth that this is gonna be going on.
Second, third.
Possibly,
And seminar.
first hour and then plan time, fifth hour probably team time, hours 2, 3, 4, seminar on Tuesdays, Thursdays is the block of time.
Is the
Right.
flex block of time.
And keep in mind, when somebody looks at this, they might think, okay, they're really getting 2 team times. The answer is no, because keep in mind, they're coming back in this traditional setting. So some of that first hour stuff might need to be dedicated to these later hours. Would the expectation be that, yeah, maybe they're charting the course for the day, sure, but it's not as if they would be getting any additional time. In my world, I see that fifth hour as embedded PD, consistently, every day. How are we doing? Where do we need to reroute? What are the students experiencing? How can we get other faculty to come over and just visit? What are you feeling when you leave this environment and go back to the traditional
So they'll be
setting?
teaching just those 2 hours, last 2 hours of the day, traditionally.
At least that's what it looks like now.
So will team time go away for everybody else? It'll be more dedicated to this, just this staff?
We haven't actually gotten to that, because
Okay.
some of those requests they're writing on our staffing request,
Okay.
for next year.
And I think, I'm gonna be a little more bold, and my response to that is, this gonna require a little bit of extra work from the people who are participating in this. I don't know if anybody that's ever participated in a pilot, absolutely. There's gonna be, because when I say how much, are there a ton of extra meetings? No, because we're gonna try to embed it as much. But for example, if my curriculum, if I struggle with that digitization of curriculum, okay, if that's one of the norms of this group, that we're really gonna commit to this, that might require a little more work on your part than it is the counterpart next to you.
And I would say that work,
When I say work, it's not, that's a bad probably word.
I would say that it's thinking.
It's a four-letter word.
Because if you look at this, and you're accustomed to, I assume, depending on how your classroom is set up, and to being in front of your students a decent amount of the time. In this universe, if you only do that once a week, you really should just be on the side facilitating. But the work, as Dr. Sayer said, is that wrapping your brain around what you're experiencing every day, bringing in new ideas, evaluating that against the old. But actually, I think what a teacher would find living this schedule is that they have more time to connect with students, that it is actually less work after you front load a little bit and get it figured out. And it becomes this routine of the students know the expectations, they are spending that time in the small group. Because what I don't think anyone would want to see, and what you wouldn't want of yourselves, is for this and this to look the same, just fewer students. Because that's easy to do, right? Just, all right, I'm just gonna do some direct instruction in that small group. Well, that's not what it's for. If you need more small group time next week, then let's build in
So,
two
one of my
months of
PLC
that.
questions, what do you do with the students who don't get it? You know what, I got a small group session blocked here, I'm gonna take these students who have demonstrated that they're having trouble, they're near, but they're not there yet. We're gonna assign them to this. My kids that get it, they're gonna come to me on Thursday, and I'm gonna do extension activities with this group of students based on the data that I have. And then in 2 weeks, at the end of the unit, we're gonna reevaluate, and then we might have to reshuffle some more. That's the flexibility of the model. So again, when I think of safety nets, we can build them into the system. Yes?
How will the students be identified that will be part of the project?
Yep, that's part of it too. Well, first of all, I think it's the next slide. We need to, and sorry,
We already talked about staff
Okay,
survey.
so we're gonna deploy that, as you know, and I'm sure Chad talked about, opting in. And beyond this meeting with staff, we'll have smaller, more meetings, dig a little deeper into what this might look like. So with students and parents, Chad is forming a parent group, and the students will be the next focus. We will be creating a focus group, randomly selected. We haven't decided, certainly this year's sophomores and juniors will be given the survey. There's talk, well, should we give the whole school the survey? We do have a student survey. I don't know about that. The seniors are kind of leaving. They might skew the data. Maybe it should just be 9, 10, 11. But, that's also a discussion that we could have with the teachers. I can't emphasize enough the investment and the leadership and opportunities that this teacher group is going to have in creating this program. And it's really an exciting time to be in education, in my opinion. But yeah, and then a student survey, we need the baseline data from them as well. And then we'll be having focus groups to talk about this model. And as long as we'll be targeting those students that meet those 6 or 7 classes taught in the sophomore and junior level, we know who those kids will be.
So it's kind of like it's a self-selection. You have the whole student population. Kids that have their schedule that line up with this is going to reduce that pool. You can then take that survey data, see kids who feel like that they might be able to be successful in this environment, then you target those.
And let's say we have 400 kids that want to be in this thing, then we're going to have to do some kind of lottery system.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just, envisioning, if you had, average and above students that are self-motivated, blah, 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 this is piece of
No.
cake, this is awesome.
I
But
will
you
tell
have the
you,
full spectrum of students.
we want a
We need
full
it.
spectrum,
Yep.
because we
Okay.
gotta run it through the paces, so we want the whole gamut. That's why we
Okay.
took band off, because we wanted to make sure that we could get the biggest swath of kids in the pilot, to run it through those robust systems.
Mhm.
So special education students will be included.
Yes.
Yes, and I think that question came up yesterday, which is a great question. I would recommend questions about that visiting with one of us or Gail Martin, who had the opportunity to have lunch with a sped teacher from the school, and all the intricacies involved there. Because, as Dr. Sayer said, one thing that we consistently said is we want to find the tough situations so that we can work them out.
Might I suggest that the percentage be similar to the total school population? So, I don't, if we have, whatever the percentage for reduced lunch kids,
Reflective of the.
and make it the same percentage for the pilot group.
Now you're thinking like a scientist and engineer.
Have,
They're
you
really
know,
creating a control group that's
That have
representative.
the same percentage demographic for the small group that it is for the high school.
So, any questions on this? Can you see how the video, can you see how customized learning, I mean, this is what, and I will tell you just honestly, West Side, I think this is where we're gonna set ourselves apart. They have mastered this. What they did not do is that customized learning piece, which I think that's what's gonna set Platte County apart. I can tell you Monette's not thinking about customized learning. They fit nicely, they marry nicely to each other, and we have the opportunity and the ability to do it. So, that's one of the, so when we talk about are we just taking something and replicating it from another, no, we're not. We're twisting it, we're making it work for our community, we're gonna use the data, we're making it very small, but we're also adding some things to it that I've not seen.
Will this affect dual credit AP, or are we starting with just?
Actually, that's a discussion to have with that teacher group.
That's a good question.
And when it was originally carved out, like, I'll just take world history, do we include AP World in this? I mean, what if that teacher ends up being Bailey in this program? So what are we gonna do with her 2 or 3 sections of AP World? Well, I think the legitimate question is go to Bailey and go, do you think that can work in this model? And if it can, then you'll be assigned one of your smaller group AP World History classes in this model.
Yeah, like what about like freshmen, you take like pre-AP English, and you kind of said, right now the ideas target sophomores, juniors. What about a freshman who takes pre-AP English, but
They'd also have to be in geometry or algebra 2. And, help me with the other.
Sorry, what's the question?
See, they'd already have to have had American history, and that won't be a fit.
So that would be a child that would probably not go over, or, because there would probably be sections of that offered, you know, in alternative hours.
So I know that I struggle with how this, well, I mean, here's the deal, I love the concept, great. I just know that I can't physically almost schedule this. I mean, you know, like on Fridays, for instance, if a teacher wants to customize this, and I'm be fine even trying to teach in this environment, I just can't wrap my head exactly on how it works right now. But like, are they gonna make an individualized, customized learning for the next week for every single kid?
I think the
Does that
form
make
and
sense?
function.
And then the form then of that week's where the teachers are going to be, those kids will then, we're gonna meet as a teacher group to make up a schedule.
Yeah.
And then it's somehow, how does that happen?
I'm glad you brought that
Is all I'm
up,
saying.
because part of this word that we discovered that was very much alive was flexible. And the teachers remain flexible in that. As Dr. Sayer pointed out, with this extended time here in the blue, maybe, you know, I'm teaching geometry and I call over to Angie and say, Angie, Timmy is going to need to stay with me for a few additional minutes, but he's going to pick that up with you because I'm going to send him over early to your large group session on Friday. Now, when we're talking about altering that for the week, it's certainly going to be maybe from that 5th hour team time of, okay, who's noticing that their students really are struggling this week, and how much time do you need next week? And that's going to be one of those things that then the form is is changed to accommodate that next week. I wouldn't anticipate us getting to that point until multiple weeks after we begin, just to see what the rhythm is like and see what that change is like. But I hope that you leave here, when you leave here, you're both enthused about this and simultaneously underwhelmed. You know, when you look at just a couple of hours in the mix of what otherwise would be a traditional schedule, I hope we're able to leave and say, yeah, this is pretty cool, but I may not even be impacted. You know, it's sort of right there, nicely book-ended in the day. And I think that was the appropriate movement to honor the work that the teachers are doing and without, breaking the bank here with all the
And
changes.
again, we're talking about end results. That whole switching of classes and modifying, I mean, honestly, I'm gonna go with kind of what Aaron said, is that probably won't be until we kind of make sure that we're going through the paces and we get the model, we're comfortable with it, then we'll start making some small shifts, just like a pilot, make some small shifts.